Hello, I'm Matt Kelly from Drexel University. In this presentation, I'll actually be talking about some of our ongoing work with regard to archiving personalized representations on the web, those things that you see that typically are on the live web but are not in the archive web. Part of this stems from an initially funded project by the IMLS in the United States in collaboration with Old Dominion University. It initially started with trying to archive advertisements on the web, but we actually have carried on to actually identifying that the web that you're seeing in the archives is not actually the web that was in the past, and that's the premise of our work. Clicker. So the premise here is that what the crawler is actually seeing, you're delegating by URL usually for these large-scale crawls, is not what we're seeing on the live web. You go to the live web, you see personalized ads that are informed by your own browsing habits. For instance, Amazon will give you the ads based on whatever you searched for earlier. The crawlers will not see this if you just say, here's the URL for us. So the realization here that the web that we're seeing now and the web we saw in the past is not the web that actually was. This is what we're essentially saying is somewhat of a false history of what we're saving. It is better than no history, but in fact, it is not the web that we actually saw in the past. This idea of a canonicalized true form of the past web is one that doesn't really exist. We're all experiencing different things. The crawlers in this case rightly have the reason to get some agnostic form for reasons of trying to not archive personally identifiable information, really getting sort of the agnostic form of what a web page was in the past. However, what they're actually capturing is in fact something that we perhaps didn't see, and this becomes of course exacerbated when you look to sites that are, for instance, behind authentication. Often we see login pages, things like that, but even if we're able to serve it with a fabricated user, then in fact we see ads that we wouldn't have seen if we were our own user. So is this actually creating a false history? Is it one that never existed? That's really, I think, a philosophical problem here. But the crawler's representation that it views is actually it is a form of representation. A crawler sees some form of what it actually saw on the web and actually grabs it. As I said, this actually started off with thinking about web advertisements that are hyper-personalized. But if you've noticed, if you've used Chrome recently, the deprecation of Manifest version 3 in Chrome has made it where ad blockers are really no more in Chrome because of having to use different APIs that make it where your Chrome currently, if you use Google Chrome, you'll notice you're seeing a lot more ads, which makes you think, okay, is the representation that the crawler saw actually one that was truer to the original form when it was seeing the ads when we were just seeing in with our ad blockers on. And so the idea, what we're trying to do here is try to repurpose a browser, all the history, to be able to use that for informing crawl. Whether we'll be able to do this at scale is sort of up in the air. The example I show here is actually what we're seeing, the local newspaper, the Philadelphia Inquirer, of where Drexel is located, where we see it with the ads and without. And if we're delegating by URL, is the crawlers like again see the ad-ridden one when prior to MV3, we might have seen the one without ads. So which is the truer form is kind of up for debate. And so what we're trying to do is leverage sort of this continuous history of what a user would have seen in the past rather than this discrete delegation of a URL in time. As you see in the second example here, if we're getting little snapshots of things, we don't sort of have this informed history. If we use some of the newer technologies, for instance, so from Web Recorder, we have an initial history, but we don't sort of have the history that we can leverage from the past to help inform the representation that we're seeing on here. Some of the past attempts to try to do this is using some of the tools that leverage the actual browser rather than having to delegate. That helped in some regard, but again, the ad blockers have made it where there's sort of this delta in the history of what we're seeing here. A work in progress tool that we're actually creating here is called aproxy. Allows you to sideload Chrome and define the different profile attributes within there, and it looks something like this. I'm running a little short on time. We define these different attributes that constitute a persona and use that as the basis for crawling in some form. It's sort of a work in progress that we have here. So initial observations in the context of ads is that the ads that are actually preserved at archive time are often different on here. I'm going to speed up a little bit. And finally, we have done some initial investigations. We put out a tech report, should be a journal article pretty recently. All of our work in development is at this GitHub repo. Slides are available here. QR here.